I'm Mary, and I work here on Montpelier. We are right here on about 70 acres of parkland that at one time was a plantation of the Snowdens. We're talking about 1780s period. And out here, you see some of the fields that we think may have been farmed, starting with tobacco and then with other crops. So here we have Stephanie, one of our archaeologists, and we have Marvin Alonso, one of our newer members in our team. And we are here to tell you a little bit about the history of the enslaved here. Now we're going to move to what's considered kind of like the scenery view of Montpelier.
So Mary, like, how would people access the property? They're coming from the fields.
The thing is that during colonial period, as you know, plantations were meant to be this major point in the landscape that everybody could see and admire, because plantation owners wanted to show their wealth. So most likely it would have come here. This would have been considered kind of like the river entrance, and they probably would have come in through, and maybe a carriage would have been to that point in front of the house.
So we think that the native people first arrived here at least 10,000 years ago. Archaeology has revealed a lot about their lives. We know that at first they were hunter-gatherers. They came to areas like this especially for resources. So around 2,000 or 3,000 years ago or so, we think that the local people were settling more into a village life. So their big villages probably would have been located on the river. So that's about 1.5 miles away from here. But we find artifacts here all over the place from the native people. In fact, the archaeology that's taken place here at Montpelier has shown we've found pieces of their stone tools and pieces of their pottery as well. So as an archaeologist, I have a pretty cool job because I have the opportunity to not only tell the story of the native people that were here thousands of years ago, but also of the more recent residents of Montpelier. There's been a lot of work that's taken place here around the Montpelier Mansion. And we've discovered a lot about the people not only who owned this property, but the people who worked this property. So why don't we head over here? I want to show you the area that the archaeologists discovered, the kitchen area. There was an archaeology dig that took place over here in 2013 because they were going to be putting in some utilities. And what the archaeologists found at that time was about a foot below the ground surface, they found a living surface. And so what we think was going on over here was it might have been some kind of like kitchen work area. It was full of dishes, really high quality dishes that are showing the wealth of the Snowdens. The Snowdens were known for entertaining, right?
Right.
Who did they entertain?
They entertain people like George Washington, Abigail Adams, and those are the ones that we definitely know because we see letters. And of course, there may have been many others that we don't know who have come through here.
Oh, absolutely. They were one of the wealthiest families in Prince George's County, right? That's what the archaeology is showing. I mean, this dishware, this is what they're showing to their guests.
The slave community here, this is really like the workspace for them, and they're taking those dishes and that prep work from this workspace and that lived experience back into the house where they're really working and providing to show off that wealth for the gentry class.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, slaves themselves were also a symbol of that wealth.
I think we mentioned earlier that there were 169 enslaved people working between here and Anne Arundel County, which the property expanded to. And also we have the evidence of the ironworks. There was on the east side of the Patuxent River. And so you have a really huge area with the concentration of the wealth right here.
So Mary, the enslaved community that's working here in the more domestic sense, the cooks, the people doing the laundry, they're really working inside the house. Do you know where they would have lived?
You know, that is one of the questions that we have a hard time answering because we don't have slave quarters left. And you know, in fact, visitors to Montpelier, the first question that they have for us is, where are the slave quarters? And we don't have that. Now, we think that the enslaved servants who worked in the house, they may have lived and maybe slept in the basement, probably right here in this wing, which was also a kitchen. and even in the attic, and we'll show you probably those spaces later on. We are going to enter the house, but we're not going to enter it as a guest of the family. We are going to enter it through the hyphen. And what is a hyphen? The hyphen is a small room that connects what we consider service lanes to the main portion of the house. And we are not entering the central passage through the central passage because the enslaved would not have entered through it. They would not have been allowed. So this is the hyphen where most likely they entered and exit. Now we're in the east wing of the house. We were right outside where there was the service area that Stephanie talked about earlier. We do think that this was a kitchen, possibly mostly used in the winter, possibly. There is evidence of soot above in a fireplace about the middle of this room. And this room was changed around probably about 1916. So you can consider this space also a space where the cook was and her helpers. And then now we're going to move on into the hyphen. I mentioned earlier the hyphen. And here we have the space that you can consider it like a mudroom, but also a prep room. When the enslaved had to take, the servants in the house had to take the food from these areas into the main portion of the house. But at the same time, we also have the spaces in which they had to go into other areas, which we're going to be going on in a few minutes. The basement, well, most likely was used for storage. I think most plantations, their basements are used for wood, for wine, and other food stuff. But also most likely was a space where the servants, the enslaved servants of the house also slept, just like we also be showing the attic. We were talking about how the enslaved, after they left the service areas, had to move about the house as if they were almost like ghosts. Unseen, they had to move very quietly. And I'm going to show you a set of staircases that originally wasn't hidden. Later owners moved this, it's called paneling forward. So now it looks like a secret case, but at one time it was open. So we'll go up the steps. They're very steep and they're very narrow. And this leads into one of the bedrooms on the second floor, and there's 4 bedrooms here. And then from here, we're going to be showing you the last part of the house, which is going to be the attic. So now we're in the attic, and here's where you can really see some of the original construction of the house. As you both probably know, nails were very expensive. So here you have a wooden peg that would have been hand cut to utilize it. And you can see how this beam is rough as to how it would have been cut. So this is some of the work of the enslaved.
These hidden details like this are very similar to the fingerprints that I found outside in the brickwork. Here are 3 fingerprints of most likely an enslaved child that have been left in the bricks. You can see that my fingers fit perfectly in there. It was often that when you look at these brick structures on plantations like this, that you'll find fingerprints, thumbprints from enslaved members of the community, men, women, and children, who were actually literally making the bricks and then building these structures. It's sometimes the only evidence that we have of the enslaved community being here outside of knowing them on the inventory. And they're leaving literally their fingerprints for us to find hundreds of years later. It's very moving for me to be able to find, even though we may not have the names of our enslaved ancestors, but to see that legacy that they're leaving for people in the future to come and honor them, and really reflect on what it took to build not only these gentry mansions for the wealthy elite to live in, but also what it took to build America.
I wanted to show you the nail holes that are in here, and this leads us to believe that there's probably plaster laid with plaster wall over here. So although the attic is open now, most likely it was sectionalized, and this could have been spaces where the enslaved slept.
Today it's a very classical, beautiful view that we get to look out, but then the horrors of that mother or father living up here, seeing their husband, their wife, their parents, their children working out there in the fields of the Snowdens.
Now, we'll be here live at Montpelier Historic Site, but we want you to join us virtually. Keep checking the PG Parks History Facebook page for more information about how to log in for this free event. The first night, September 18th, we will feature our very own Marvin Alonzo Greer with the founder of the Slave Dwelling Project, Joe McGill, for a conversation about the legacies of enslavement. On the second night, September 19th, Joe McGill will be joined by Rico Newman, an elder with the Piscataway Indian tribe, to talk about the legacies of colonization. Please join us and tell us your thoughts. Tell us what you think. We want to hear from you. Join us for this important and timely conversation.